Welcome to the Jamnagar J3 Petrochemical Complex and Reliance Industries Installation video program. In this video, we will show you how to install a combination of Pyrogel XT-E and mineral wool as a thermal insulation system for piping and equipment operating at above ambient service temperatures. Now let's walk through the steps involved in getting to a completed pipe section like this one. Both the Pyrogel and mineral wool insulation materials should be stored in a clean, dry, and protected environment. If the material is stored outside, it should be placed on pallets and fully covered for protection. Aerogel materials are engineered with safety and performance as our top priorities. The Pyrogel blankets will likely produce dust, so we recommend using dust masks, safety eyewear, and work gloves for personal comfort. Pyrogel dust can be easily washed from the skin and clothing with soap and water. Before starting, make sure all work surfaces are clean and free of moisture and other imperfections. The first step is to cut the Pyrogel material into lengths to fit the pipes being insulated. You can use a box cutter or knife to do the cutting. The work table should be wide enough to accommodate the roll of Pyrogel insulation and long enough to fit the components being insulated. To determine the length of material needed for each layer, refer to the cut charts as a guide. You can also use a scrap piece of Pyrogel to measure the length by wrapping it around the pipe and then marking the place where it meets. A butt joint should be used for both the longitudinal and circumferential seams. Transfer the measurement to the roll of Pyrogel material and cut to length. Place the cut pieces on pallets and cover, bag, or wrap them in plastic before moving them to the work area. Here at the Jamnagar J3 site, you will be installing a combination of Pyrogel XT-E and mineral wool insulations. For both products, the thicknesses required are determined by the size of the pipe being insulated and the process temperature. Refer to the charts provided in the project specification for the appropriate insulation thicknesses. Pyrogel XT-E is manufactured in two thicknesses, 5 mm and 10 mm. For small bore piping with diameters of 3-inch NPS or less, the 5 mm blanket should be used. For larger piping, 4-inch NPS or greater, both the 5 mm and 10 mm material is acceptable. You will be using two different techniques to install the combination of Pyrogel and mineral wool. One technique involves placing a spacer strip in between the Pyrogel and the mineral wool. In the second technique, the mineral wool is applied directly over the Pyrogel insulation, and no spacers are needed. To begin insulating, place the first layer of Pyrogel on the pipe, and, while holding it in place by hand, wrap it around the circumference of the pipe. Then, secure the Pyrogel with stainless steel wire. The wire should be installed 50 mm from each end, and on 225 mm centers along the length. Tighten the wire until longitudinal seams are tightly butted with no gap. Install adjacent sections of Pyrogel in the same fashion. Install additional layers of Pyrogel over the first layer and secure those with wire, making sure to stagger all joints. Longitudinal joints should be staggered a minimum of 75 mm in order to stagger the location of the joint around the pipe circumference. All circumferential joints should be staggered by a minimum of 75 mm along the longitudinal axis of the pipe. For vertical pipe runs, Both Pyrogel and mineral wool insulation should be secured with stainless steel bands on the outside layer. Once the Pyrogel has been installed to the correct thickness, you need to determine if a spacer is required before the mineral wool is installed. To do this, look at the gap between the outer diameter of the Pyrogel and the inner diameter of the mineral wool pipe cover. If the gap is less than 5 millimeters and the mineral wool fits tightly without moving, it can be installed directly over the Pyrogel. But if the gap is larger than 5 millimeters, a Pyrogel spacer strip needs to be installed to create a tight fit. To determine if this gap exists, place the mineral wool pipe section over the Pyrogel installation. Move it around to see if the pipe section moves freely. If it does, a spacer is needed. Use a 50 millimeter wide strip of Pyrogel and wrap it around the installation. Secure each Pyrogel spacer with wire. The spacers should be installed at equal spacing of 300 millimeters apart. If additional strips are needed, follow these same steps and build up the spacers to the required thickness. Once the spacers have been installed, you can install the mineral wool pipe cover over the Pyrogel. The mineral wool pipe cover layer should be installed with the circumferential joints staggered from those of the Pyrogel insulation. If the mineral wool fits tightly, then you can install the mineral wool pipe cover directly over the Pyrogel without spacers. If the outer diameter of the mineral wool is greater than 200 millimeters, secure with stainless steel bands. Please note that when installing insulation for service temperatures above 300 degrees Celsius, foil should be installed over the Pyrogel insulation before installing the mineral wool. If spacers are required, they can be installed directly over the foil. The insulation process is now completed. It can be finished with the jacketing system that is called for in the project specification. Small bore piping that is 3-inch NPS or less is insulated in much the same way as the larger bore piping. The only difference is that the Pyrogel insulation should be installed using 5 millimeter thick blankets to allow for easier wrapping on the small diameter pipes. The thinner 5 millimeter blanket bends more easily and produces a nice tight fit around the small bore pipe. Elbow sections for piping 8-inch NPS and smaller are based on a reverse gore style pattern that gathers in the throat and is closed along the heel. Larger elbows are often constructed of individual gores that get applied one at a time, with the seam located in the throat. We'll now show the installation of a 4-inch NPS elbow using a 90-degree elbow fitting. To install the Pyrogel, first place the middle of the fitting along the throat of the elbow. Tightly wrap the material around to the heel, aligning the seam with the center line of the elbow. Apply stainless steel wire around each gore to secure it. It is important that the Pyrogel material is tight to the elbow. Work the excess material around the elbow towards the back side of the fitting until the butt joint is closed tightly. Once all gores have been secured, push material from both ends of the fitting cover to ensure that all seams are tightly closed. Apply each subsequent layer in a similar way. After the Pyrogel insulation has been installed to the correct thickness, use the same method discussed earlier to determine if a spacer is required before the mineral wool is installed. Place the mineral wool elbow over the Pyrogel. If the gap is more than 5 millimeters or the mineral wool does not fit tightly, a spacer will be needed. If spacers are required, wrap them around the elbow and secure with a wire. You are now ready to install the mineral wool elbow over the Pyrogel. Place the mineral wool elbow over the Pyrogel. Secure each gore with a band. This completes our demonstration of Pyrogel XT-E and mineral wool installation techniques. For more details on installing the Pyrogel and mineral wool combination, please refer to the project specification.